Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to Synchronicity University. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. This video is on Saturn in the sign of Capricorn in the natal chart, or Saturn in the 10th house in the natal chart, or Saturn transiting the 10th house. So we'll take them one at a time. Now, Saturn in Capricorn and Saturn in the 10th, there's a natural connection in modern Western astrology between certain signs and houses as there is between Capricorn and the 10th house. Now, if you have Saturn in Capricorn, you will relate to the stuff that has to do with Saturn in Capricorn and some of the stuff that has to do with Saturn in the 10th house. But for a more complete picture and to really understand how that Saturn is trying to move you towards greater love and greater wisdom, which is what everything in the sky and everything in our life is trying to do, move us towards the fuller embodiment of that, which I like to call greater love and greater wisdom. To understand that more fully, you may want to watch the other video that specifically has to do with where Saturn is by house in your chart and synthesize that information. So let's take it one at a time, okay? Let's start with Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. So Saturn comes home in Capricorn. This is good. Here, Saturn is able to bring forward the most diligent, hardworking part of itself. Here, this placement of Saturn in Capricorn is people who recognize the value of work, and especially work that moves them towards something better. This is about people who are encouraged to, at several key points in life, depending on what transits come along to that Saturn, these are people who are going to have to own a sense of ambition, own a sense of agency. These are people who are going to have to, in some way, work towards accomplishing something that is bigger than what's right in front of their face to do. So it is about understanding. This energy is about understanding. You can have anything that you're willing to work for. Anything worth having is worth working for. These are the big keys where it comes to Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. And it becomes about understanding a sense of direction and understanding how, seeing how, if you do this now, then that will line up with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, like the dots lining up for you very nicely. Now those dots, that perspective, that ability to see in retrospect that which hasn't even happened yet, is what I see Saturn in the sign of Capricorn in the natal chart. That's what I see that is about. Now, also with Saturn in Capricorn, this is energy. Capricorn is a sign that is sometimes associated with the main father figure in your life, the main paternal figure in your life. So having Saturn in the sign of Capricorn means that that particular relationship would be that much more important, would be that much more, especially on a psychological level. Now, our relationship with our parents are very important in our lives, but it is that Saturn in Capricorn that says that there's an emphasis on the relationship with the father. There might have felt a feeling of restriction. You might have sort of taken on very paternal values, if you will. And so what I mean by that is a very strong identification with the father, and particularly with traditional values as well. So again, I'm speaking archetypally, right? Your father, you could have a strong alliance with him. He might not have been traditional. He might have been, you know, a real revolutionary, and that's awesome. But this is more about internalizing and really feeling a sense of tradition and wanting to honor tradition in some way. So when I see somebody with Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, I always think, okay, there's going to be a motivation here to accomplish something. There's an understanding that you're building something in life. And so what is it that you're building? And life is going to ask you to answer that question. Now, how that Saturn is aspected is going to tell you something about how able you are to embrace that and how much you identify with it as well. And also with traditional values, with how the establishment, what is established in a cultural, societal level, but also personally as well. How much have you taken that on? How much are you uncomfortable with that? All of that speaks in how that Saturn is aspecting other placements in the chart. So if you've got your Saturn in Capricorn, but it's making all kinds of squares to your moon, to your sun, to your Mars, well, that tells me something about, you know, the tradition, that what you believe about traditional stuff, that you might feel really oppressed by tradition. You might feel that the tradition and the traditional ways of doing things ultimately left you feeling emotionally restricted or held back. And so these are people in some way who might feel restricted by the traditional way, and yet they feel a strong pull towards it. There's a real strong desire to in some way honor tradition. If you've got your Saturn positively aspected, if your Saturn is making a trine to your moon, then this is going to be somebody who has an innate understanding that by achieving something, they're honoring their family tradition, their legacy, they're building something that matters. They have a real inner core of stability that they can channel towards a value of success that likely is there, an emotional value, an emotional need for success that likely is there. So these are just examples. If you have Saturn natally in the natal chart in the 10th house, now I spoke about this actually if you've got Saturn in the first house as well. So in the first house video, I touched on this, and I'll touch on this also now. These are really key placements. Whenever Saturn is in an angular house, it sort of makes, whatever's in an angular house is more important, sort of, you know, like just sort of broadly speaking, right? Not sort of, I won't get into too much of the details at this moment, but when you look at a chart, there are certain hot spots in a chart. And what's happening closer to those hot spots is going to be more emphasized to that person. And those hot spots are determined in different ways. And one of those ways is looking at what's happening at the angles. That's one of the key ways. So that Saturn in the 10th house, and the closer it is to the midheaven, the more this energy becomes dominant and emphasized and matters in the life of the person of the chart. But these are people who really are constantly feeling like they have to do more, to achieve more, to succeed. And these are people who strongly identify with their accomplishments as well. So they gain a sense of authority by achieving something, and that's who they see themselves as. They say, I am this achievement that I've made, and this position even that I hold, this career position, the success that I've garnered. They identify with it more deeply than someone who may not have Saturn in their 10th house might. Now, Saturn in the 10th house, actually, you see a very common placement in people who are very successful. I see this again and again. People who work hard, who achieve a lot over the course of their life, have Saturn in the 10th house. One of those people, it's a rectified chart, but I do believe one of the charts I saw for Oprah Winfrey way back in the day, I remember remembering and noticing a 10th house Saturn. So that is somebody who really has prioritized achievement. And also the relationship with the father is something she talks about quite a bit. And there's a connection with the 10th house and the father as well. And she talks about how she went to live with her father for structure, that she didn't have any structure in her life when she was living with her mom in her very early life. And it was by going and living with her father that her whole life changed. It became one of structure and achievement and accomplishment. As soon as she went to live with her father, that Saturn in the 10th house kicked in. And her 10th house values and the importance of that 10th house kicked in and magnified that much more. And that's really been the area of life. Like, she's really proud of everything that she's achieved. She constantly talks about her achievements and how much it matters to her more than any other choices that she might have made. So we see this. People who have strong 10th house, now that doesn't mean that you won't have a family. If you want a family, you can have that. You can have anything you want, I believe. Anything you want. Sometimes it might come about in a roundabout way. But if you want something, we have that ability as human beings to work on our own behalf and make amazing things manifest. So Saturn in the 10th house understands that and is willing to do the work to get there. Success, purpose, life purpose, and legacy. Keyword, legacy. What legacy are they creating? These are not people who are going to be happy working a 9-to-5 day job, right? Again, all else being equal, if they've got very strong 6th house placements, might be okay. But if you've got Saturn in the 10th, you want to do something with your life. You want to leave a legacy. You want to achieve something. And just doing something without any sense of direction and fulfillment of purpose, fulfillment of your potential is not going to work. It's just not going to work for you. When Saturn moves into the 10th house, now, again, I got to say, people, say a lot of stuff about Saturn. People talk a lot about Saturn. And, they dread it. They talk about how hard it is. Yeah, if there's a hard aspect of Saturn happening, it can suck for sure. And I'm sorry. And you have my, my empathy and my compassion with you, okay? As we should for all human beings when they go through a tough transit. So a tough transit of Saturn can feel limiting, can feel, like a burden, can feel heavy, can feel restrictive, all the things that are the antithesis of easy breezy happiness, okay? But Saturn ultimately is blessings because Saturn manifests. Saturn makes things happen in the physical realm. And when Saturn moves to the 10th house, usually as it crosses the midheaven, sometimes we'll cross it 3 times, usually this is about you being honest with yourself about where you are in your career and your work, and where it is that you could be doing more, where it is that you're not living up to your potential. All of that comes into focus when Saturn crosses over the midheaven. Now, you may have just one transit of Saturn over the midheaven and then moving into the 10th house, or, depending on how big that 10th house is, might be 3 years, might be a little longer, a little less. You might have Saturn move over the midheaven 3 times. It might go direct, in shadow, retrograde, and then direct again 3 times. So as it's dipping back into the 9th house, this to me suggests that Saturn is saying, okay, you need to basically get your proverbial ducks in a row. You need to get your vision straight. You need to seal the deal on that credential. You got to go back and make sure that you have all your college credits, all your university credits. You got to make sure you get the right reference letters. These are the things that Saturn moving back and forth in these houses is going to say. It's going to say that, okay, yes, you have a desire to manifest now, but wait a minute, you got to make sure you got this in place to really manifest what you want. So that can happen with this placement. Now, as Saturn moves into the 10th, Saturn in the 10th, to me, transiting through the 10th, personally, amazing time. I have seen this in a lot of people. If you've got placements in your chart that suggest a person who has a sense of purpose or ambition or really wants to achieve something in this life, Saturn moving through the 10th is the best thing that could happen for this person. Because this is when they get it. It's okay, yeah, as much as I put in, I will get. And so they feel like they're working with the universe. They're putting in what they need and they're manifesting at the same time. So this can be a time of a lot of reward for people. Depending on, again, what you did in the 4th house is a big part of it. But really in all the houses. But as I spoke about in the 4th house video, what you do in the 4th house lays the groundwork from which you will build and fully manifest 14 years later when Saturn crosses the midheaven. So Saturn crossing the midheaven and entering the 10th house brings with it a time that you are reaping rewards as far back as 14 years, okay? Maybe even further back, but really you can see clearly the work, what's happening, the good that's happening. You can connect it to what happened 14 years back, actually, if you think about it. Now, 14 years back, it might have just been an interest that showed up for you. That now has manifested into a full-blown career with accolades and everything. So this can be a time when you get serious about your career and the universe responds in kind. The 9th house normally is associated with publicity and the desire for publicity, but I think that the 10th house brings renown and it also has a connection with fame. And if you've done the work and you've established yourself as an authority, this is the time when the recognition comes as well. And also Saturn in the 10th house is just a time of a lot of achievement, which ultimately it can be one of those high points in a career. And especially if you are a person who cares about manifestation, this can be a time when you just look back on and you go, wow, I achieved a lot. And it's the type of achievement that gives you a sense of self-respect that really has the potential to stay with you for the rest of your life. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Interact. I love interacting with you guys. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, nadiyashah.com, and the YouTube comments as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Until we connect again, take care. Thank you for watching this lesson as part of Synchronicity University. You can go online at synchronicityuniversity.com or Click on your screen if you're on YouTube right now to access even more video lessons, to access horoscopes, interviews with some of the most amazing astrologers in the world, and so much more.